A number of Indigenous groups have complained that they were excluded from the process to create the National Action Plan. The Native Women's Association of Canada was part of the process, but then left it, calling the federal approach fundamentally flawed and the process toxic and dysfunctional. The organization has now filed a human rights complaint in Canada and called upon the United Nations to compel the federal government to take immediate steps to end the genocide against Indigenous women and girls. Lynne Groulx is the CEO of the association. She's with me now. In fact, she joins me from a resiliency lodge in Chelsea, Quebec, which her organization says should be at the core of any action plan. Lynne Groulx, first of all, thanks for taking time to speak with me. We now have the release of the federal action plan, and that's prompted you to file a human rights complaint and call in the United Nations. Why?
Yes. So we'd like to make it clear that we don't have an issue with the part of the action plan where the organizations have put forward plans on work that they want to do. We take issue with the federal government's part of the plan called the Federal Pathways. That plan should have followed what the Calls for Justice said in Call for Justice 1.1, which said that the initiatives have to be specific, they have to have targeted funding, they need to have an implementation plan, and that's not in the government's plan. So you can't, without an implementation plan, how is that an action plan? That's where we really have we're really taking issue.
So it sounds like your concern is that you feel that the government's kicking action on this down the road, that it's a plan to have a plan.
That's correct. So, if there's no action, there's no plan. There's no action plan. It is not a real action plan. And I do want to make it clear again that we really fully support all the organizations and the family circle and survivors. So we definitely support those, projects that are there or plans that are there, but not this Federal Pathways report or plan. This is what we think that is really fallen short.
Okay, you introduced earlier this week. You introduced your own plan. It's costed. It has some timelines and timetables. What should the federal government have proposed today? What did you want to see?
We wanted to see that. We wanted to see what it said in Call for Justice 1.1. We wanted to see the initiatives costed out with the measurable results. This is what we needed to see, not another plan that will take another 1 to 3 years to put in action. The families want action and need action, and the time for waiting is it's long overdue. The plan itself is already 1 year overdue.
So what's at the basis of your human rights complaint and your call to the United Nations to get involved in Canada?
Well, the basis of that is that there is a genocide in Canada. So this has been declared, this has happened, and the government's failure to take those 231 calls and actually implement them and deal with the genocide.
You went further. You've talked about how you support the proposals put forward. I think there's almost a couple of dozen other Indigenous groups who are involved in the process, 18, I think, the provinces, the territories. You support their proposals that were part of the action plan, but your organization also called the process to develop the action plan toxic and dysfunctional. What do you mean?
Yes. Well, so our organization represents First Nation Métis Inuit for over 47 years. In order for us to participate in a meaningful way, we would have had to be on committees because the constitution of the process was all set up by committees. We would have had to have a seat on the First Nation Métis Inuit committees and 2 LGBTQ committees, as well as the Family Survivor and Circles committee. And we were not on any of those committees. So how could we participate in a meaningful way, bring forward, our suggestions, our ideas, which are coming from our grassroots women? We are the largest Indigenous women's organization in the country. We can't even sit on the committees. How could we have a meaningful place? And we tried. We stayed there for a while, and then we realized that, our president, who was sitting on the one committee, the one committee we were on, was sitting there when there was offensive remarks being made, insults by email, and it was repetitive. Every meeting was happening at every meeting and in between the meetings.
But insults, what do you mean insults about what?
Just it got personal, right? So it got personal, remarks that were offensive to some, right, and exclusionary. This type of bullying tactics, I would say.
Okay, so what kind of currency then do you think that this action plan? We've talked about the groups that are part of the process, and you support the measures they've put forward. But what kind? I mean, we've heard from other groups today saying that they weren't part of the process; they were excluded. So I guess I'm wondering what kind of currency you think the action plan will have. It can't be implemented across the country unless the groups that are involved in the process think the process was the right process. So what kind of currency do you think it'll have across the country?
And this is a problem that the government has. So this is why, the implementation part of their action plan or the government's pathways was so important, because how are they going to take hundreds of initiatives and all of these plans, put them all together? And we asked the minister that question specifically. How on earth are you going to actually implement all of these different plans from all of these different organizations? And what we were told was that, well, yes, they'll pick and choose some initiatives and some projects. Some will be funded and some will not. So that's not an approach that is systemic. It's not stable. It's not the paradigm shift that the inquiry report talked about. It's not the transformational change. It's more short-term Band-Aid solutions that we don't think are appropriate because we're in a situation of a genocide.
Okay, Lynne Groulx, thanks for your perspective. I do appreciate you taking time to speak to me. Take care.
Thank you very much.